Thanks, Governor. And my name is Omar Blaik, and my hope is actually to shift the conversation maybe to a level where we nest the discussion between universities and cities in a more of a national conversation about the topic. Let me, we're talking about cities and universities. Let's talk about cities. A deep belief, I think, that we all share, that cities are really a manifestation of us as humans and our achievement. It's our platform to advance knowledge and prosperity. But most importantly, maybe picking up from where the governor was talking about inclusion, it is in cities that we actually get to know each other, to get to tolerate and hopefully like each other and understand the other, rather than just being isolated in our own bubble. But it is in the cities that the ideas get created, that places of learning and pursuit of enriched life happens. And that's really the larger construct that we are talking about in terms of our place within cities. I will quote another famous politician, Senator Patrick Moynihan, who said, if you want to build a great city, create a great university and wait for 200 years. So the question is really, maybe we debate him on the 200 years part, but otherwise I think it's a very good statement that he said. So universities have been at the heart of cities for a long time. You can go through many civilizations and actually see that in the Middle East and in Europe and elsewhere. But the interesting thing is that the role of universities in cities and their influence on the lives of the communities is not as well understood. And that, in fact, the tension between universities and communities are so prevalent that we created the term the town-gown divide to describe what that is. The divide may be natural, because there are two communities that are governed by different rules, that have different demographics, that have different purposes, and sit geographically next to each other. So it's natural for there to be tension. The question really that we all have here, is it inevitable? We come with the hypothesis and hopefully the practice that says, no, the tension is not inevitable at all. When you look at the American history of universities and across the country, you actually find the relationship between campuses and the communities have either been extremely defensive or ambivalent at best. And the reason is largely two main reasons. One is this idealistic view of academia as a sanctuary. You know, it's a place where really scholars go in and are isolated from the hustle and bustle of cities so that they can think big thoughts and then improve on the lives of society. And the defensive part is the urban decade that happened in the 50s and 60s, where many urban institutions found themselves in a place where they needed to defend against that decay by, rather than engaging, by actually retreating. So you find that these attitudes have prevailed throughout higher education for decades, and what happened is that over the past 20 or so years, the discussion started to change. And I was fortunate to be part of the transformation of West Philadelphia about almost 20 years ago at the University of Pennsylvania under the leadership of Dr. Judith Rodin, the first female president of an Ivy League institution, where she had the privilege of having been born in West Philadelphia, having gone to a public school in West Philly, and then went to the Ivy League institution in the neighborhood. At the time, it was vibrant, it was connected, all of the campus and the city were almost seamlessly connected. She came back as a president 30 or so years later, or 25 years later, to find that Penn has been really isolated, has become a fortress in the decay that is happening around West Philadelphia, and administration after administration, rather than engaging that decay, retreated from it, defended against it. And as many of us know, the universities have tools to do that. They actually create building entrances of the courtyards on the inside and put the loading docks on the public streets. They create walls and let the fenestration of buildings happen actually on the inside. There are so many signals. Sometimes they create a landscape mode just to put the academic building on a higher ground. As you are walking the sidewalk, it sends you a signal, just do not come in. I mean, those are all, didn't happen by chance. Those are all actually design tools that have been used for decades to isolate the town from the ground. So anyway, 10 years through our work at Penn, transformed West Philadelphia and became an exemplar and a national story that then, being a bit entrepreneurial myself, I decided maybe time has come for us to take this out as a business to other institutions. But I would actually quote Dr. Roden in her book about the transformation of West Philadelphia. And she said at the end, she actually concluded a very scholarly done book about the 10 years experience she had. And she said, the net we saved might well turn out to have been our own. And that, I think, is an extremely important thing to say and to understand, that at the end of the day, institutions of higher learning are not engaged in this effort because they are doing charity. They are not engaged in this effort because the community is poor and we are enlightened and we are intellectual and we are rich. So we are going to pass on some charity token to the community around us to actually be engaged. We are doing this because of our enlightened self-interest. By understanding that we as an institution cannot survive unless the community around us is sustainable, is thriving, is vibrant, then our community aspirations and our aspirations actually overlap. Since Penn, and there are other institutions, as Brit and the governor said, not just Penn, but started to actually create a body of work around anchor strategies and civic engagements that fundamentally started to change the mission of institutions to include economic development and civic engagement as part of their core mission. If you go, for example, to the Georgia Institute of Technology, their core mission is education, research, and economic development. And that actually is remarkable when you start thinking of public institutions and why are public institutions engaged in the business of educating younger generation. It is for the economic development of that state. And that's something that we will come back and talk about as it relates to Maryland. So that's the national kind of context of this topic of town gown. And when you come to talk about the University of Maryland and College Park, I would say it fits very much the model of the national context, but maybe there are two separating or two differentiating characteristics that are of note. One is that the urban form of both the campus is sprawling, and the city is very low density and kind of spread out. Actually, very different than, for example, you're talking about Penn and Philadelphia, or talking about Chicago in the South Side, or other big institutions. The other one, which I believe is actually more important, is the relative size of the institution compared to the city. So when you are in cities where the institution is 10, 15,000 students, and the city is 100,000, 200,000, think Lexington, think University of Kentucky, Lexington, think of Madison, and the University of Wisconsin. The university doesn't overwhelm the city. But we here are in a place where we are almost 40,000. Are we 40? Have we reached 40? What's the number, Carlo? 39. Okay, we haven't reached 40 yet. And a city that actually, I believe, if my numbers are accurate, 40,000, Andy, or less? 32. 32. So you actually get a relative size of the institution that is overwhelming. and sometimes is suffocating on the town. And I remember one of the first presentations I gave to Dr. Lowe and the Council of Deans and the Cabinet. I said, is this our destiny or our making? And in fact, it is our making. The fact that the institution, because of its relative size, is not as engaged with the town ends up being in the state of less maybe progress and less development. So we go back to tell the story about how it all started, and you can't really talk about that without the arrival of Dr. Lowe as a president in 2000, I believe November of 2010, but really 2011, when he started to know where he was and how, this is a big institution to get your arms around. But it was during that year that we worked with the city and the university to develop a common vision for the city. And what was remarkable was that Dr. Lowe fundamentally understood that University of Maryland prominence nationally will be stunned if in fact the surrounding community continues to be isolated and that the host city, College Park, continues to suffer from the inherent tensions between a town and a gown. And the fact that the city's population, especially in the core of downtown, is dwindling because of the growth of student population, created this monolithic use within downtown that is largely student type uses that are overwhelming any other types of uses. What's remarkable in the town-gown tension is this myth that you find, and we found here, is that the university needs and those of the community are so different. So many institutions across the country start with the premise, I don't want to talk to them because I don't know what they want, and what I want I can control and I can actually execute on that, so I'm not going to talk. So you either have somebody who doesn't talk, or you have somebody who talks but doesn't listen. But by and large, we actually come from the experience, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We actually all aspire for the same thing. If the community wants safety, the university wants safety. If the community wants less pollution, the university wants less pollution. If the community wants vibrancy and places to go, the university faculty and staff will want the same. And in fact, that those aspirations are almost the same, and that's what we found. We actually started with town halls and working through the CPCUP vision at the time, and to our surprise, everything that the university aspired for was exactly everything that the community aspired for. And the question was really to create that connection now on a path to make that happen. And what started as a vision very quickly create a vision of vibrancy, of safety in streets, sustainable communities. All of that actually started to be extremely well understood by both the administration and its leadership, and by the city and city council and city leadership, and by the community. The vision manifested itself in 5 strategies, 5-pronged strategies. I think Carlo mentioned them. They are safety, education, development, transportation, and sustainability. I want to maybe talk about 2 of them that I think were probably the foundation of everything that we have done. One is Dr. Lowe, when he first came, did 2 things that signaled a very different outlook for the institution. He actually accepted the purple line, as the governor said, coming through the campus, and not just coming through 5 stops through the campus, and became a fundamental part of how we will be connected to the corridor that the governor talked about. And the other one was expanding the university student code of conduct throughout the city and not just on campus. This is a tremendously important issue, that if you as a student conduct yourself in a certain way on campus, you get sanctioned. But if it happened off campus, you can do anything you want and you are not really part of that. And I think that working with the city, working with the senator and many others, it became a very important signal, along with the expansion of the UMD police throughout the city, that basically signaled your issues and your concerns are ours as well. And to the extent that we are causing some of them, we are going to own up to them, and we are going to do something about it. And the other one that I think Donna is going to talk about is the College Park Academy. I'm not going to steal your thunder, Donna, but again, fundamentally, if you do not create an educational path that is part of a free public education that is accessible by faculty and by community members, you cannot really build a community. And I think Donna will talk about that much more. So at the end, when you step back, you actually find and you realize that a comprehensive strategy, the 5 prongs were being done together and not separately in silos, actually leverage the institutional economic enterprise to create a higher quality of life for residents, students, and faculty alike. And that is the common vision that I believe we all have been striving to accomplish, and we believe in many ways that we, for the past few months, have been seeing the fruits of our collective efforts. I will stop here, and then there will be questions and answers after everybody is done. Thank you.